I still remember the heat of the coffee before I felt the burn. 1 second I was standing there, balancing my bag on one shoulder, thinking about a meeting I was already late for, and the next, a paper cup flew through the air and exploded across my blouse. The lid popped off. Coffee splashed my neck, my chest, my hands. Brown stains spread fast, soaking into fabric like a warning I didn't understand yet. I froze, more shocked than hurt, my brain lagging behind what my body already felt. Then I heard her voice. Sharp, loud, shaking with pride, not apology. She told me to watch where I was walking. Said I should be more careful. Said I clearly didn't know who I was dealing with. And then she said it, like it was supposed to end the conversation right there. Like it explained everything. The CEO is my husband. The hallway went quiet. Too quiet. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Someone gasped softly. I looked at her face for the first time. Young, angry, certain. She looked at me like I was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe. Like I didn't belong in the same space as her confidence. And in that moment, something deep in my chest whispered, very calmly, that my life was about to crack open again. Before I tell you how I ended up there, let me slow this down. Because nothing about this story happened fast. It only felt fast when it finally collided. Everything before that was quiet, slow, almost polite in how it unraveled. A year before that coffee hit me, my marriage ended. Not with screaming or slammed doors or some dramatic confession. It ended with silence that grew too heavy to carry. My ex-husband and I had been together for over a decade. We built a life that looked solid from the outside. Shared routines. Inside jokes no one else would ever get. Sunday mornings that felt safe and predictable. We knew how each other took our coffee. We knew when to give space and when to lean in. And then one day he looked at me differently. Not angry, not cruel, just distant. Like he had already left and forgot to tell me. A few calm sentences later, we were done. He said he felt disconnected. Said we had grown apart. Said he didn't want to keep pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. There was no mention of someone else. No accusations. No tears from him. Just distance. At least, that's what I believed back then. The divorce was clean on paper but messy in my heart. I signed documents with steady hands and went home to rooms that felt too quiet. I told myself I was okay. I focused on work, on healing, on becoming someone who didn't flinch every time a memory tried to surface. I stayed off his social media. I didn't ask mutual friends questions. I didn't want details. I wanted peace, even if peace meant not knowing. For a while that worked. Then, 6 months later, I heard he was married again. Not dating. Not engaged. Married. The news came from a coworker who didn't know she was stepping on something tender. She mentioned it casually, like she was talking about a show she'd watched over the weekend. I laughed. I even made a joke. But that night, I sat alone on my couch, lights off, staring at the wall, replaying everything. How did he move on so fast? Who was she? How long had she been there? Questions filled the space I had tried so hard to keep empty. I told myself not to care. I told myself it didn't matter anymore. People move on. Life happens. Still, something felt wrong. Not dramatic wrong. Just off, like walking into a familiar room and sensing that something had been moved. But you can't see what. I tried to ignore that feeling. I threw myself deeper into work. Eventually, I transferred departments. New building, new faces. New routine. I thought distance would finally do its job. If you're already feeling that pull, that quiet curiosity about where this is going, take a second to like and subscribe. Stories like this don't rush their truth. On the channel Betrayal Uncovered, every detail matters, and nothing is as simple as it first appears. I didn't expect my past to follow me into a place full of glass walls and unfamiliar names. I didn't expect it to wear a company badge, and I definitely didn't expect it to throw coffee. When she said, "The CEO is my husband," no one challenged her. People stared. Someone rushed over and apologized to her, not to me. No one asked if I was okay. No one offered me a napkin. I muttered something I don't remember and walked quickly to the restroom, my hands shaking as I tried to blot the stain away. I stood in front of the mirror and looked at myself. My face was calm, too calm, but my eyes weren't. They looked confused, hurt, curious in a way that scared me. CEO. My ex-husband was a CEO. I laughed under my breath, telling myself I was being ridiculous. Big companies have lots of CEOs, right? It could be a coincidence. A cruel one, but still just a coincidence. But the feeling wouldn't leave. Over the next few days, I started hearing things. Small whispers that people didn't realize I was listening to. The intern was married to someone powerful. She didn't have to follow the same rules. She didn't have to apologize. People adjusted their tone around her. Tiptoed around her moods. I kept my head down, but my mind wouldn't slow. How old was she? How long had she worked here? How long had they been together? I caught myself asking questions I had promised myself I would never ask again. At night, memories I thought I had packed away neatly started surfacing. Little things I had ignored when they happened. Late meetings that ran longer than expected. A sudden interest in mentoring younger talent. The way he guarded his phone but smiled more than usual. Back then, I told myself I was imagining things. That I was insecure. That I needed to trust my husband. Now, those moments tapped on my thoughts like impatient fingers, demanding to be reconsidered. Anyone in my place would feel unsettled. Anyone would wonder if the past was really as clean as they were told it was. A week after the coffee incident, I saw her again. From a distance, she was laughing too loud, surrounded by people who seemed eager to impress her. She stood like she owned the space beneath her feet. I couldn't see her face clearly, just her hair swinging as she turned her head. My heart started racing for no clear reason. I told myself I didn't want drama. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to confront anyone. I just wanted the truth, whatever it was, even if it hurt. That night, I sat in the dark and scrolled through my contacts, past names I no longer spoke to, until my thumb stopped on one I hadn't touched in months. My ex-husband's name. I stared at it longer than I should have. I told myself not to do it. I told myself calling him wouldn't change anything. But curiosity is quiet, patient. And once it settles in, it always wins. I pressed call. As the phone rang, I stared at the wall, counting each tone like it was ticking toward something I wasn't ready to face. When he finally answered, his voice sounded the same. Calm, familiar, dangerous, and how normal it felt. I didn't accuse him. I didn't explain. I just said his name and asked how he was doing. There was a pause. Small, almost unnoticeable. But long enough. In that silence, every unanswered question leaned closer. And right before I said why I was really calling, I realized something I couldn't unfeel anymore. Whatever the truth was, it hadn't appeared suddenly. It had been walking around me this whole time. After that call, nothing felt quiet anymore. The office still sounded the same, keyboards tapping, phones buzzing, people laughing in break rooms. But inside my head, everything echoed. My days kept moving forward, meetings on my calendar, emails I answered on autopilot, polite smiles I wore without thinking. But my thoughts stayed stuck in that pause on the phone. That tiny hesitation before he spoke. The way his voice softened, like he was choosing each word carefully, afraid of breaking something that was already cracked. He had asked how I was doing. I said fine, too quickly. He said good just as fast. Then there was that space again, heavy, unnatural. The kind of silence that says more than words ever could. I didn't mention the intern. I didn't say coffee or CEO or husband. I didn't accuse him of anything. I just listened. And the more he spoke, the more distant he sounded, like he wasn't fully present. Like he was talking from another room, another life I was no longer allowed to enter. He ended the call quickly, said he was busy, said we'd talk later. We never set a time. That night, sleep refused to come. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying my marriage with a new lens I hadn't wanted to use before. Scenes replayed differently now. Toward the end, he had stopped sharing details. Not secrets exactly, just less. Fewer stories from work, fewer names. When I asked about his day, he'd shrug and say it was the same. I believed him because I wanted to. Because trusting him was easier than questioning everything and risking what I wasn't ready to face. I remembered how conversations slowly turned one-sided. How I filled silence with my own thoughts while he nodded along, already somewhere else. At the time, I told myself it was stress. That success changes people. That marriage has quiet seasons. Now, those explanations felt thin. The next morning at work, I noticed her before she noticed me. She walked past my desk without a glance, heels clicking against the floor, like she knew the sound would make people turn their heads. She didn't look nervous. She didn't look unsure. She wasn't dressed like someone just starting out, someone still trying to prove herself. She carried herself like someone who expected the world to make room for her. And it did. People leaned in when she spoke. People laughed too hard at her jokes, even the ones that weren't funny. When she frowned, conversations paused. When she smiled, tension lifted. It was subtle, but once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. I started picking up on small things I would have ignored before. She arrived late to meetings, and no one said a word. She left early and smiled like it was a favor she was granting. Once, during a meeting, she interrupted a manager twice her age. Her tone wasn't polite, it wasn't apologetic, and no one corrected her, they just nodded and adjusted. I told myself I was overthinking. Divorce rewires your brain. It makes you hyper, aware, suspicious of shadows. Anyone in my place would feel unsure. Anyone would question their instincts after being wrong once already. I reminded myself that I didn't have proof of anything. Just feelings, and feelings can lie. Still, the red flags kept stacking quietly, one on top of another. One afternoon, I overheard her in the break room. I hadn't meant to listen, but her voice carried. Low, sweet, controlled in a way that felt practiced. She said, "I told you, I don't like when you don't text back." There was a pause, then she laughed. Soft, but sharp at the end, like a warning disguised as affection. When she noticed me standing there, she turned away and ended the call quickly, her smile vanishing in an instant. That laugh stayed with me longer than it should have. A few days later, while skimming through emails, I saw my ex-husband's name in an internal thread. Just his last name. Formal, distant, professional. But my chest tightened anyway, like my body recognized the threat before my mind caught up. He was scheduled to visit the office the following week. A brief appearance. A walkthrough. Nothing major, according to the email. My hands shook as I scrolled. Why hadn't he told me? That night, I turned my doubts inward. I questioned myself harder than anyone else ever could. Was I projecting my unresolved pain onto a situation that had nothing to do with me? Was I searching for betrayal because it gave my divorce a clearer reason? Something easier to blame than quiet emotional distance. I reminded myself that he was allowed to move on. That his new wife, whoever she was, didn't owe me anything. That my healing shouldn't depend on his mistakes. But then I remembered the timing. How fast everything had happened. How quickly he had rewritten his life, like erasing a chalkboard and starting fresh without looking back. The next day, I ran into her in the elevator, just the two of us. The doors closed with a soft ding, trapping us in polished silence. The elevator hummed as it began to rise. She checked her reflection in the mirrored wall, adjusted her hair, then glanced at me like she had just noticed I existed. "You look familiar," she said, smiling without warmth. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure she could hear it. I shrugged, keeping my voice light, said maybe we'd crossed paths before. She tilted her head slightly, studying me like a puzzle she enjoyed taking apart. "Maybe," she said. Then, casually, like she was commenting on the weather. "My husband says this company is full of people from his past." The elevator suddenly felt smaller. The air felt thinner. I forced a polite smile, but my mind raced. His past, not our past, not me, just people. Loose connections, erased chapters. When the doors opened, she walked out first, confident. Unbothered, heels clicking away like punctuation. I stayed inside for a second longer, breathing like I'd just surfaced from deep water, my chest tight, my thoughts tangled. That was when doubt shifted into something heavier, something colder. Later that afternoon, I found myself opening the company directory without really deciding to. I didn't know what I was looking for. My fingers moved on their own, scrolling, searching. Her profile photo was there now, recently uploaded. She was smiling brightly, perfectly composed. But something about the picture felt staged, like she knew exactly who would be looking at it and why. Her last name was different. That should have comforted me. It should have been proof that I was spiraling for no reason. It didn't. Because beneath her name was a small line of text, easy to miss if you weren't already on edge. Emergency contact on file. I recognized the number instantly. It was his. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned, my heart pounding in my ears. A disturbing realization settled in slowly, not as a scream, not as a breakdown. As a quiet click, like a door locking behind me. This wasn't a coincidence brushing past my life. It was circling it, patiently. Waiting for the moment everything would finally collide. After I saw his number listed as her emergency contact, I couldn't pretend anymore. That quiet click in my chest turned into pressure, like something was slowly pushing outward, demanding to be acknowledged. I closed the directory and sat there, staring at my screen while emails piled up unanswered, subject lines blurred together. Notifications chimed and went ignored. It felt wrong to keep doing normal things when something so carefully hidden had suddenly shown itself. I didn't confront her. I didn't call him back. I didn't even talk to anyone about it. I did what I had learned to do best during the last year of my marriage. I observed. The days leading up to his visit felt unreal, like I was walking through fog that refused to lift. Time stretched strangely. Mornings felt rushed, afternoons dragged, and nights were endless. Every sound in the office felt louder than usual. Every laugh sounded forced. Like everyone was performing calm while something sharp hovered beneath the surface. I started noticing her more, not because I wanted to, but because she made herself impossible to ignore. She checked her phone constantly now, her thumb moving fast, her expression changing with each glance. She straightened her posture whenever senior leadership walked by, like she was silently reminding herself of who she was connected to. Her clothes became sharper too, more intentional, like she was preparing for an audience that mattered more than anyone else in the building. At night, my mind betrayed me. Flashbacks surfaced without warning, pulling me backward into moments I had once dismissed as nothing. I remembered a dinner 2 years ago, sitting across from my ex as he casually mentioned a bright intern he had been mentoring. He'd smiled when he said it, almost proud. He said she reminded him of himself when he was young and ambitious. I had laughed and teased him about becoming soft, about taking on strays at work. He laughed too, but I remembered how quickly he changed the subject. I remembered how, once when I joked about interns being reckless and overly confident, he defended her. Not loudly, not aggressively. His tone shifted, protective in a way I hadn't heard before. I noticed it. I filed it away. And then I ignored it, because questioning it would have meant questioning him. Another memory followed. A work event I didn't attend because I was sick. He came home late that night, unusually energized, pacing the kitchen while talking fast about how successful the event had been. I remembered hugging him and catching a faint scent of perfume that wasn't mine. He brushed it off, said the place was crowded, said people hugged. I told myself I was tired. I told myself I was imagining things. Now, those moments lined up differently. Not like accusations. Like patterns finally visible once you step back far enough. The day before his scheduled visit, I saw her in the stairwell. She was crying. Not messy crying. Not broken. Controlled. Her shoulders were tense, her breaths measured. When she noticed me, she wiped her face quickly and straightened, her composure to snapping back into place like a switch had been flipped. "He's under a lot of pressure," she said suddenly, as if we were already mid-conversation. "People expect too much from him." I didn't ask who she meant. I didn't need to. I nodded politely, but my stomach twisted. The way she said him felt intimate, possessive, like she was speaking about someone she protected, someone she belonged to. That night, sleep barely touched me. I kept imagining the next day on a loop. Him walking through the doors. Her rushing to him without thinking. The truth spilling out in some dramatic, undeniable way that would force everything into the open. But reality rarely gives you that kind of release. It's quieter than that. Crueler. The morning of his visit, the office buzzed with a strange energy. People cleaned desks that were already spotless. Managers rehearsed smiles in reflective surfaces. Conversations sounded lighter, but tension hummed underneath. I stayed seated, heart hammering, pretending to work while my body braced for something it couldn't yet see. When the elevator dinged, I felt it before I saw him. That familiar shift. The way the room subtly adjusted around his presence, like gravity had changed direction. I didn't look up at first. I didn't trust myself to breathe if I did. Then I heard her voice, softer than I'd ever heard it before. Almost gentle. "You're here?" I stood slowly, like my body needed permission from my mind. My legs felt unsteady as I followed the sound, my pulse roaring in my ears. Each step felt heavy, deliberate, like I was crossing a line I wouldn't be able to uncross. I saw his shoes first. Polished. Familiar, shoes I'd seen by our front door for years. Then his hands. Moving as he spoke, gesturing naturally. The same hands that once rested on my back during long drives. The same hands that held mine during hard conversations when we pretended everything was fine. He smiled. Not the public smile he used in meetings or photos. A private one, the kind reserved for someone who mattered. And then she stepped closer. Too close. She reached for his arm without hesitation, like the movement lived in her muscle memory. Her fingers rested there comfortably, claiming space that no one questioned. My breath caught in my throat. Flashbacks hit all at once. Late nights. Guarded phone screens turned away from me. The way he emotionally pulled back months before the divorce. The speed of his remarriage. The confidence she carried like armor. It was all connecting now. Too clearly. Too late. People gathered around them. But their voices faded into nothing. My focus narrowed to the way she angled her body slightly, positioning herself so I couldn't see her face clearly from where I stood. I took a step forward. My legs felt weak, but my need to know was stronger than fear, stronger than pride, stronger than the promise I'd made myself to never reopen old wounds. She laughed at something he said and leaned in, whispering near his ear. He nodded, indulgent, familiar, like this was normal. Like this had always been theirs. That was when the final realization settled in. This wasn't new. This wasn't sudden. This had been growing quietly while my marriage was still alive. I moved closer, the noise of the office dissolving completely now. Just a few more steps and I'd finally see her clearly. The woman who had walked through my past unnoticed and planted herself firmly in my present. She turned slightly. Not enough. Just enough for me to see her profile. Her smile. Her certainty. And right before her eyes met mine, right before her full face came into view, my heart dropped into my stomach. Because I already knew what I was about to see, she turned fully toward me. And the world didn't explode. It didn't spin. It didn't blur. It went quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears, that makes your own heartbeat sound too loud. For a brief moment. It felt like everything paused just long enough for my mind to catch up with what my eyes already knew. I knew that face. Not from work. Not from rumors whispered in hallways. Not from guesses or fear. From my own memories. She was the intern from the photos he once showed me on his phone. The one he had scrolled past too quickly, the one he had described as too young to take seriously, the one he said was ambitious, harmless, temporary. I remembered her because something about her smile had stayed with me back then, even though I couldn't explain why. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't suspicion. It was just a quiet note my instincts had played once and then gone silent. Seeing her now, standing in front of me with his hand resting protectively on her back, made everything painfully clear. This wasn't a new love story. It was a continuation. A story that had started while mine was still being lived. Her confidence suddenly made sense. The way she moved through the office like she belonged everywhere made sense. The way people bent around her moods, the way rules didn't seem to apply to her. All of it finally fit into place. And the way my ex had emotionally checked out long before the divorce papers were signed finally had a name. She met my eyes and froze. Just for a second. That was all I needed. Recognition flickered across her face, fast but unmistakable. She knew exactly who I was. I wasn't just another employee. I wasn't invisible. I was real to her now. I was the past she thought she had escaped. The office noise slowly returned, like sound creeping back after an explosion. Someone laughed nearby. Phones buzzed. A printer hummed. Life kept going. completely unaware that mine had just rearranged itself in a single breath. My ex followed her gaze. Then he saw me. His smile disappeared. There was no denial in his eyes, no confusion, no polite surprise. Just a tightening of his jaw, and a look that said he had hoped this moment would never come. That look hurt more than any argument we ever had. More than silence. More than distance. Because it confirmed everything without a single word. In that instant, the coffee incident snapped into focus. Her anger, her certainty, the way she had spoken to me like I was nothing. I wasn't a stranger who bumped into her. I was a ghost she thought had already been buried. He introduced her to the group as his wife. No name. No story. Just the title offered like a shield. She leaned into him again, reclaiming her space, daring me to react, to expose something, to break the illusion. But I didn't. I didn't need to. The truth was standing right there, breathing, holding his arm. There was nothing left to explain, nothing left to prove. I walked away quietly. No scene. No confrontation. I didn't give them the satisfaction of watching me unravel in public. My hands shook, but my steps were steady. I had already lost enough dignity to that story. I wasn't giving it more. Later that day, my phone rang. His name lit up the screen. I almost didn't answer. I stared at it, letting it ring, feeling something strange settle over me. Not fear, not hope. Clarity. I answered. He didn't apologize. Not really. He didn't explain either. He said he never meant for me to find out like this. As if there was a better way. As if betrayal has a polite version that spares you. He talked in circles, carefully avoiding timelines, carefully trimming words so they wouldn't overlap too much. He said things like, just happened, and wasn't planned, and I didn't want to hurt you. I let him talk. I didn't interrupt. I didn't challenge him. Because I realized something important while he spoke. I didn't need his honesty anymore. Seeing her face had given me the clarity I'd been missing for years. The kind of clarity that doesn't ask questions. The kind that doesn't beg for truth. The pain was real, but it was clean now. Sharp, but honest. Not the dull, confusing ache of unanswered questions. Not the slow erosion of wondering what I did wrong. That night I cried. Not because I wanted him back. Not because I felt replaced. Not because I felt defeated. I cried because I finally understood why I had felt alone even while married. Why love had slowly felt like something I was maintaining by myself. Why silence had crept in long before divorce ever did. Acceptance didn't arrive dramatically. It didn't come with a speech or a sudden sense of peace. It settled in slowly like dust after chaos, quiet. Final. I blocked his number. I stopped replaying old conversations. I stopped wondering what else I'd missed. And most importantly, I stopped blaming myself for trusting someone who was already halfway gone. Some betrayals don't shatter you. They free you. If this story made you feel something, I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Comment what you think about her behavior and about his silence. And if you know someone who's been through a quiet betrayal like this, share this story with them. Sometimes seeing it reflected back is the first step toward healing. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying until the truth surfaced. On Betrayal Uncovered, stories like this remind us that clarity, even when it hurts, is still a form of healing.